Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi mining community, welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Grant Sboros, who's the CEO of Eurosum Mining, a public listed development stage mining company focused on unlocking value through responsible development of the Rovina Valley Project, which is one of Europe's largest gold copper projects. Grant is a chartered accountant by background and has extensive experience in Africa, both in operations and finance. Working for the likes of Deloitte and Glencore, he has been at the helm of Eurosum since 2022. And he's going to talk about, obviously, the company, the challenges that the company's been facing, going from exploration to development. We're going to speak about, obviously, mining within the EU and the outlook, I suppose, of the company, but also talk about the financing within the industry, the mining industry, because it seems to be challenging and has been challenging over the last few years. Anyway, Grant, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Good, and you, Rob. Thank you very much for having me.
No, that's fine. So I just wondered if you can just tell us a little bit about, obviously, your career, as we always start these podcasts off. I just wondering if you just tell us about your career. Obviously, I mentioned you work for the likes of Deloitte and Glencore. But I just wonder if you could just walk us through how you got into the mining industry up to sort of present day.
Sure. So, I mean, my Deloitte career kicked off back in 2002 and within the South African firm. And after that, I progressed through to the ranks of manager and even ultimately an audit partner, which I held an audit partner role for 5 years. Really, from the outset of my Deloitte career, even though it was auditing, I was focused on mining, as that was my primary sector. So that started giving me introductions into understanding mining from the outset. And until the day I actually left Deloitte in 2012, I was heavily focused on the mining industry for Deloitte right throughout the world. I joined Glencore shortly after that, went up to the operations in Zambia and looked after Mopani there from a strategic aspect. And while we were doing upgrades and upgrading the mines, that's where I started getting my real taste for actual mining operations as opposed to finance. And then after 4.5 years there, I moved on to the DRC to look after Katanga mining for them, which obviously is one of the larger copper producing mines in the world, copper and cobalt. And was there with them for a few years and left Glencore in 2020 and took a little bit of a break over COVID, and then joined up with a Canadian junior mining company, and which ultimately led me into this role here at Eurosum.
As you've obviously just alluded to, obviously your leadership spans obviously from roles from Deloitte in Mozambique through to CFO position at Katanga, and obviously for Glencore. To now being a CEO of Eurosum. How have these varied experiences shaped your approach to leading the Rovina Valley Project?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rob. I mean, in essence, it really provided a great foundation for me to be able to move out of the finance world, or the pure finance world, to take on some very senior leadership positions within Glencore's entities. It also gave me an introduction to the Canadian aspect in the TSX, because I was an executive on a TSX company, which was KML, which was a listed entity at the time with Katanga. So within that whole context, I was able to roll up my sleeves, get into the nitty-gritty of understanding mining operations, regularly being underground or in the pits, not sitting in an office. I was on site for 95% of my life in terms of the roles and the work that I did, which was getting into understanding all the nuts and bolts that would shape me being able to move into this role where we are building a mine. So in all the mining that roles I had, we were developing mines. We were either they were existing mines that we were rehabilitating or upgrading, and that shaped this asset for me in such a way that I was able to provide good foundation, good tools, good understanding to be able to develop this asset, which is, even though it is a development stage asset, it's a highly developed stage asset. It's got it's fully DFS'd, detailed engineering design work is complete. So it's an asset that once we are done with these permits, we would like to get into the construction stage immediately. There's not any further drilling requirements or any other exploration required. The asset's packaged and ready to go. So that from the beginning of my career, all of those little small steps in the beginning were able to shape what I could deliver and the value I could deliver to get this project over the line.
I just wondered if you can give us a snapshot of the history and obviously profile of Eurosum Mining before we then speak about the project.
Sure. So, I mean, the project was initiated in 2006. So it was discovered in 2006. And from then it was into a company called Carpathian Gold. And from there, various things happened. The assets got spun out eventually into what we have Eurosum today. Various sets of management, were developing that. Obviously, it was a long-term drilling program. And we managed to get all of that done and dusted with everything in place from a technical aspect. And then that left, really now looking at the finances and shaping it up to get the last permit that we require to get this thing built.
So I just wondered now if you can just give us an overview of the Rovina Valley Project. I suppose where you're up to now with everything, and I suppose the timeframes around what you've done so far.
Sure. So look, when I took the asset over, I mean, it wasn't in great shape. Finances were very dry, and the asset itself, is a world-class asset. As far as we're concerned, it is the second largest deposit of gold in Europe. It's the second largest deposit of copper, proven and probable, measured and indicated within the European context. You're looking at a 10.4 million ounce equivalent of gold, and there aren't many assets in the world that exist with that type of uniform deposit in a porphyry style. So we're not mining epithermal veins, quartz veins. It's just one big block of uniform copper and gold in terms of volume and in extraction. So it's very steep. I mean, so we're in a very, very secluded part of Romania, which has a rich history of gold mining and mining in general, that predates the Romans. So the mines were operating here till about 2006, and we need to now make sure that we take this deposit, get it into production, because it will just continue to deliver a really good free cash flow every year, because the deposit is very uniform, and that is not common. It's not a common find. The area is quite rich in gold, as I stated previously, and it's just an asset that is not going to be that heavily capital intensive in terms of getting it into production. I mean, I've worked on mining projects where we spent upward of $4 billion to get them into production and in large volumes. This is a much less ask in terms of capital intensive. We believe that we've got a very good break even in terms of understanding where our gold price is relative to our costs, and that makes it very lucrative at this stage, especially with the uptick in the gold prices as well, and copper's obviously gone up.
You've recently secured some financial stability. So I just wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about that and what it obviously means to the business.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, Rob, that things have been tight in the market over the last couple of years. So we've come through some pretty hard and dark days, keeping this ship afloat. It hasn't been easy. So we secured a deal with Trafigura. Initially, it's going to be a facility of $200 million US, and that's broken up into various tranches. We've closed the first tranche and received the money for that, and I'm hoping within the next 3 weeks we'll close the definitive agreements for B and C. The relationship is good. I mean, I think both parties have really worked hard to get it to this point. I've really appreciated Trafigura's attitude and seriousness that they've attributed to us, and how vested they are in the project and how much they really enjoy it. Following on from that, we will be working together to be raising another $200 million in probable debt financing. And both parties, it's in, everybody's in now, so Trafigura's in, we're in, we're going to work to get this thing done. So the money that we've raised is, it was obviously critical for the business needs, and the majority of the funds are earmarked to get into construction. So we do have some small requirements to get us over the line, but it's everything is positive, and just be very grateful because obviously Trafigura speaks for itself. It's a powerful business that has got a lot of experience in offtake financing. And what was really important for me is that I didn't want to burden the shareholders with more equity deals. I think all the shareholders really have chipped in over the last 2.5 years to keep everything going. So it was ideal for us to get an offtake financing agreement which wasn't dilutive, and at the same time, the debt financing aspects will also try and protect the interests of the shareholders. So it's been incredibly exciting, a lot of hard work. It hasn't been, it's an arduous process for a deal of this size, but we managed to get it over the line, and we will get to the end of the definitive agreement, rather, as quickly as we can. Obviously it's long contracts and lots of work and lots of lawyers, and we'll get through that, and then we'll have a great relationship moving forward, because they're not going to put $200 million into a project if they're not going to go the whole hog, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that the relationship is solid, and the team that I work with from Trafigura are really great.
Great. Obviously, you're moving from exploration to development now, and obviously it can be frustrating, as you've mentioned, and obviously challenging. Is this your experience of this during, obviously your experience in Europe doing this? And I wonder if you had any other advice that you could give other Europeans that are involved in that stage, from going from exploration to development, from your perspective working in Europe.
Sure. Look, I think it's just important to note, Rob, that obviously our asset, our business, this mine has got a strategic status from Europe. That really it will make our lives a lot easier. It significantly de-risked the project in terms of permitting. The advice that I could give to people that are operating in the European space, if you've got the opportunity to apply for the status, it's not an easy process. It does take a lot of work and hard work. But once you've got it, it will somewhat undo the arduous processes of complicated permitting. We are waiting for the Romanian government to get on with the legislation. That has been a little bit frustrating, but it's something that we are working on now after the recent changes in the Romanian government. Have only just come into pass 3 weeks ago. So you need to understand the jurisdiction that you're working in. You need to make sure that you cross your T's and dot your I's in terms of your studies. The environmental requirements are very stringent, as you can imagine, within the European framework. So you really need to make sure that you from the outset that you are meticulous in the way that you organize your planning, because one small thing can cause a lot of delays, a lot of questions, a lot of issues, open you up to potential claims, and NGOs getting into your projects as well. So I think that there is a seriousness in terms of the change in Europe wanting to really get back into mining. And I just say, you need to be patient. You need to keep your head down, even though you might some days, go 2 steps forward and 10 steps back. You just got to keep on, keep on, keep on, keep on, because ultimately Europe will need the materials. And that's what we're aiming to do, is to make sure that we provide it to Europe and into Romania specifically, to stimulate the economy here, as they're in a large deficit financially. A project of this size would be the biggest project in the last 40 years in the country, to give you an idea of the scale. And I mean, I think it just contributes to at least some growth within Europe, which is hard at the moment to achieve. I mean, there isn't. It's a little bit of a, it's very static in terms of growth. And I think that it's exciting to be within the Europe ambit, because we do have a lot of these deposits, and we do have a lot of these mines or possibilities of mining in the future, and they need to get into production.
You just mentioned, obviously, a new government coming in.
Right.
What's their stance on mining?
Look, Rob, everything that we've seen indicates that it does seem positive. With them being completely new people from the last 2.5 years in government that we've dealt with, we are busy as we speak, getting those meetings arranged so that we can have more formal discussions. Because, I mean, the political situation has flipped on its head in Romania. And for the most part, the comments that we've seen from the Prime Minister, from the new president of the country, is that they are pro-mining. And we will be able to, give a little bit more understanding of that and what's going to happen in the processes after we've had our initial meetings, over the course of this week and next week. But on the whole, it doesn't seem to be that there's anything negative at this stage.
What's your view on what the EU is trying to achieve through the CRMA, and is the European mining back in vogue?
Okay, yeah, Rob, as you mentioned earlier, the CRMA is definitely a great tool to show the seriousness of Europe's interest in developing its mining industry. I don't think that Europe is placed itself very well in terms of securing its materials, especially from China, or being at the mercy of the rest of the world, when it's got access to be able to get to its own materials. So the framework that's been put in place from our perspective, shows that there's a seriousness, because it's now a matter of law. It's a principle of law, and that's been implemented. And Romania, as a member state, has to adopt that as part of being part of Europe. Now, if we went back, a year or two ago, I mean, I don't think there was a lot of seriousness around Europe's ability to get mines up and running. There was just so much red tape around permitting, so many discussions, so much bureaucracy, and not there wasn't a will. The CRMA provides that framework for us to make sure that we can get there, and there are time limits that are imposed in terms of making sure that things get done. So the clock has started ticking, and that's great, because we will have to get it to a point soon, and that forces the government and authorities to get going, and it makes sure, definitely makes sure that keeps us on our toes as well.
How do you assess the current mining landscape, obviously from a financial perspective in Europe, and also what's the appetite for mining within the region, Europe as a whole, from your perspective?
Rob, difficult one to talk across different jurisdictions. I can certainly speak for Romania and a bit in my experience in Poland. Both countries have got a rich history of being industrial giants, in the past, which has, definitely fallen off a lot, and they are definitely serious about getting back into mining and certainly reindustrializing the country. There's a very, very big question mark over Romania's budget deficit at the moment, which is widely and publicly known. And somehow they're going to have to generate, funds and incomes. And the best way to do it is, because they're both resource-rich countries, is to make sure that they get into it. Other jurisdictions, I mean, we've seen some very positive movement in Sweden. We've seen some positive comments out of Finland, where they have just, adopted all of the legislation, done everything, and pushed forward a couple of projects, which were tied up in so much red tape. And if, the government just stepped forward and said, right, these projects will move ahead, without, and I think also, the American political situation, the way Trump is also pushing forward his mining agendas, is rubbing off on the European space as well. And so from my side, I mean, I think there certainly is the will and the interest. I think Romania just needs to also just catch up a bit. But as we all know, or people following know, that Romania has had a bit of a tough time since December of this year to June, with the political elections and situation, and getting that now into something that is settled and can move forward.
Do you personally want to see the project through to construction?
Yes, no. I mean, that's why that was always the goal from the beginning, Rob. I believed in the project a lot. I'm not just the CEO. I'm a significant shareholder in this business as well. So yes, I mean, I think I would like to be there for that first pour. I think that would be a point of where maybe I could possibly think about, doing something a little bit less, or to maybe taking on something else. But I'm fully vested in this project, and always have been from the beginning.
What's your long-term value proposition for any potential investors in your Eurosum Mining?
Nice question, Rob. Look, I think on a personal note, I mean, I don't think we've seen the share price behave as well as what we thought it would. I mean, we were always aware that the non-financing or the project not having a strong financing behind it was obviously a big consideration for investors. But once we got that done now, and I mean, I was surprised to not see a little bit more value added onto the share price from there. I mean, obviously there is two things that the investors are waiting for, which is legislative changes from the Romanian government themselves, which I think will definitely go a long way to settle investors down a bit on an asset like this. And then the final permit, obviously, which is what we are working towards. I mean, we feel, we know what our MPVs are, which are on our website through our DFSs, and that was, formulated with some very, very conservative gold and copper prices. So we know that there's a lot of value in the stock, and that's also why I've tried to limit, further dilution. So I feel the stock is significantly undervalued. I feel it's still a good opportunity for investors, because the upside is significant. Personally, as the CEO of the company, I mean, I feel that it's significantly de-risked, and I can't really see too many red flags, for us at this stage. It's just a process. It takes time, and we will get it there. So from the investors' perspective, we would like to see a little bit more interest, and hopefully, get some new investors into the system. We are working on a few marketing ideas, etc., in terms of trying to get some promoters and get some analysts involved. But from the past, we never had the flexibility of looking to spend money in those corners, because there was more important priorities. And now is the time where we'll get a little bit more focused on that. But the primary focus always remains getting through what I've just discussed with you in terms of the final permit, and then pushing the Romanian government along.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, and summing up, and lastly, what's the next sort of 6 to 12 months look like for Eurosum Mining?
No, so Rob, look, I mean, over the next month, we need to close up on the definitive agreements with Trafigura, and we'll get that over the line. And concurrently with that, we've got meetings with the government trying to push them to get the legislation out in the next month or two. And then we will be submitting our environmental impact assessment over the next 3 months, which we believe will be the last document that will be needed to submit to get the last permit. And then, there'll be toing and froing on the EIA submission in terms of questions backwards and forths. So over the next 6 months, it's really those are the key aspects that we're going to be doing. And then we are, just busy completing our land purchases on surface as well. The remaining pieces of land that we need to require, because we've got the mining license underground. Obviously, the surface is just something that we are busy cleaning up and tidying up. So that keeps us busy, full time. So that's really the next 6 months, and then we would obviously like to start getting into the construction post that. We're ready to get going as soon as we get that last permit.
Yeah, great. Grant, really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the podcast, sharing your story. Obviously, giving us a overview of Eurosum Mining and a company obviously moving from exploration into development. And obviously, wish you well for the remainder of this year, going into next year. And perhaps you want to come on the podcast during next year and give us an update.
Sure, Rob. Thanks. Thanks very much again for having me. Thanks for the opportunity to tell our story, and definitely interested in coming back to provide some updates, when we're ready, for sure.
Yeah, great. And if our audience wants to reach out to you, and obviously if they want to follow your story, what social media platform channels are you on, and how can people get in contact if they do have questions?
Okay, well, obviously, primarily there's the website. There's a portal there for investors to put questions forward. I think we're managing that quite well through our marketing and communications team. So that's always the primary place to go. Obviously, we've got a platform on X, and we've got a platform on LinkedIn in terms of where we provide regular updates. And then, ultimately, anything really important is coming out through the press releases, which we trying to get as many important material information aspects out to the shareholders. So that's currently what we've got. I can't think of anything else at this stage, but that's what we've got.
Yeah, no worries. And we'll include those in the show notes, the company's podcast for our audience to have easy access to follow the story and reach out to you. So all the best
Thank you.
as you go through the next 6 months and hopefully into construction next year.
Perfect.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. Obviously, this is a project that's in Romania, so we don't want to just share it amongst Europe. We do want to share these stories across the world. So thanks for listening. Please keep sharing these podcasts and keep enjoying these podcasts. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.